Well, I closed the wrong window. Okay. All right. It happens. So I kicked my own self out of the broadcast there, but here we are. Nobody got hurt. We're all right. Hello, everybody. Mwah. And we'll just get this video going here. Try to screen share again without screwing it up this time. Sharing screen. We gotta click share screen. We gotta say share system audio. So yeah, okay. And we want the Chrome tab. And it's that one. Oh, look, I was watching it. It's weird to watch myself, so I had to see, like, you know, it's a thing. All right.
It's just dropping dead.
All right, wait. I'm not ready yet. I need to go back to my little window and mute myself. Okay, let's get into this.
Lori Vallow has had quite the history of young folks just dropping dead of heart attacks around her and other things that can't be determined. Today, we're going to take a big, long, hard look at that. Death is inevitable. We all die. Death in itself is not mysterious. Death happens to every single one of us. What is mysterious is how people die that have had a history with Lori. Here we have Stacy Cox Cope. Stacy was very sick before she died. From what I can find out, they never figured out exactly why. In fact, her death is listed as undetermined. Stacy's ex-husband alleged that Stacy grew to actually fear food. Actual food. He would bring it in the house and she would throw it away. By the time she died, she couldn't even eat anymore due to her severe digestive issues. The cause of these digestive issues was seemingly never diagnosed definitively. In the end, she had a feeding tube. Now, Stacy's ex alleged that her own family thought she wanted or was entitled to be put out of her misery. Stacy Cox Cope died in San Antonio, Texas on May 21st, 1998, the day Lori arrived in Hawaii for a vacation. Lori was recently divorced from her husband, William LaGoya, just 6 months before. Lori and her son, Colby, Barry and Janice, Lori's parents, and her sister, Summer, were all on this trip. Alex Cox was taking care of Stacy back in Texas. He allegedly took all of her credit cards and spent all her money as soon as she died or as she lay dying. What a guy. Now, let's just put a pin in that for a minute. Next, let's fast forward 20 years to April 2018. Joseph Ryan, Lori's third ex-husband, is found dead in his apartment. His apartment is locked from the inside, and the police, having been called to do a welfare check on Joe's apartment, decide to climb through an open window due to the smell and the flies coming from the apartment. That was their probable cause. They discover that Joe has indeed passed. His death date is listed as April 3rd, 2018. Now, Joe had had a contentious custody battle with Lori. He also had a sizable life insurance policy. These two things alone make it deadly to be associated with Lori. Now, in December of 2017, a CNN headline reads, Vermont senior tested Ricin recipe on retirement community. She ultimately pled guilty to possessing a toxin without obtaining a federal approval. Could this story have inspired Lori? Oddly, another Ricin incident was in the news around the same time as an unexplained death with Lori. In March of 1998, when 3 members of a splinter group of the North American militia in Michigan were arrested for weapons and conspiracy charges. Now, although Lori was not connected to Michigan, her family was very pro-militia, and we know Barry considers himself a sovereign citizen. This story would have been on their radar, in my opinion. One thing that stands out to me in the Michigan case is that those men needed to find a way to obtain castor beans. Now, given that the castor bean plant is invasive in Texas, this would not have been a problem for Lori. Anyone who lives in a climate where these plants thrive know how deadly they are, and they warn anyone around them that they're deadly. When I first moved to Hawaii, I went to go pull one up, and so many people ran toward me. I didn't know. I thought I was like pulling up a plant that was precious or something. And they're like, no. You have to, be wearing gloves and you've got to be careful. And this is the castor bean plant. And, it's the most deadly plant in existence. Now, I don't know if that's true, but I know they're damn deadly. I do not have any proof that Barry Cox or any member of the Cox family were associated with or belonged to any militias, but historically, sovereign citizens and militias go hand in hand. Now, speaking of radical beliefs, did you know that castor is mentioned in the Bible? It's in the book of Jonah. It's Jonah, chapter 4, verses 6 through 11. And the Lord God prepared a gourd and made it to come up over Jonah, and it might be a shadow over his head to deliver him from his evil. So Jonah was exceedingly glad because of the gourd. But God prepared a worm when the morning rose the next day, and it smote the gourd, and it withered. And it came to pass when the sun arose that God prepared a vehement east wind, and the sun beat down upon the head of Jonah, that he fainted and requested for himself that he might die, and said, "It is better for me to die than live." And God said to Jonah, "Art thou greatly angry for the gourd?" And he said, "I am greatly angry, even unto death." Basically, he's mad enough to die. And the Lord said, "Thou hast pity on the gourd, for which thou hast not labored, neither madest it grow, which came up in the night and perished in the night. And should I not have pity on Nineveh, that great city, wherein are more than 60,000 people that cannot discern between their right hand and their left hand, and also much cattle?" So basically, he's telling Jonah, like, you didn't do anything to make that plant grow. Why do you care about it? In the same way that Jonah was saying to God, why do you care about those people? They don't have anything, they don't worship you. Why should I care about them? I don't have anything to do with them. And so he was teaching Jonah a lesson here. Now, the other interesting thing is castor is referred to as the palm of Christ. So Lori may have interpreted that as the hand of God, in my opinion. What exactly is ricin? And why is it so deadly? Ricin is the toxic protein found naturally in castor beans from the castor bean plant, Ricinus communis. And it can be deadly, but it depends on the dose and the route of exposure. Now, I'm getting this off of medicinenet.com. If the castor beans are chewed and swallowed, the ricin can be released. However, simply chewing the beans won't necessarily kill a person. Castor beans are processed to make castor oil, and ricin is part of the waste produced in this process. If ingested, ricin gets inside the body's cells and prevents them from making proteins they need, killing those cells. It was discovered in 1888 by Peter Hermann Stillmark, a German scientist working in Russia, who extracted this substance from castor beans. Protein toxins such as ricin have been used experimentally in medicine to kill cancer cells. Early symptoms ingestion usually occurs in less than 10 hours. Early symptom poisoning by inhalation may appear within 4 to 24 hours. It only takes a small amount to kill an adult. This type of poisoning is highly unlikely, and it usually needs to be ingested or injected, and large amounts need to be inhaled to be toxic. But unfortunately, there is no antidote for ricin poisoning. Thus, there is no cure for it. Avoiding exposure is the best preventative. If exposure cannot be avoided, the first step in treatment is to get it off or out of the body as quickly as possible. Treatment for poisoning basically just involves supported medical care to minimize the effects. Ricin is a poison protein found naturally in the castor beans from the castor bean plant, and if the castor beans are chewed and swallowed, the ricin can cause injury. It can also be in the form of a powder, a mist, or a pellet. It can be dissolved in water or weak acid. It is a stable substance under normal conditions, but it can be inactivated by heat above 80 degrees. Now, the major symptoms of ricin poisoning depend on the route of exposure and the dose received, though many organs may be affected in some severe cases. Initial symptoms of the poisoning by inhalation may occur as early as 4 to 8 hours and as late as 24 hours after exposure. Following ingestion of ricin, initial symptoms typically occur in less than 10 hours. Within a few hours of inhaling significant amounts of ricin, the likely symptoms would be respiratory distress, that's just a fancy word for difficulty breathing, fever, cough, nausea, and tightness in the chest. Heavy sweating may follow, as well as fluid building up in the lungs. Pulmonary edema. Alex. Alex coughs. Anyway, this would make the breathing even more difficult. The skin might even turn blue. Excess fluid in the lungs would be diagnosed by an x-ray or by listening to the chest with a stethoscope. And finally, low blood pressure and respiratory failure may occur, leading to death. In cases of known exposure to it, people having respiratory symptoms should seek medical care. Now, ingestion. if someone swallows a significant amount of ricin, he or she would likely develop vomiting and diarrhea that may become bloody. Severe dehydration may be the result, followed by low blood pressure. Other signs and symptoms may include seizures and blood in the urine. Within several days, the person's liver, spleen, and kidneys might stop working, and the person could die. Skin and eye exposure. Now, it's unlikely to be absorbed through normal skin. Contact with ricin powders or products may cause redness and pain of the skin and the eyes. However, if you touch ricin that is on your skin and then eat food with your hands or put your hands in your mouth, you might ingest some. Ricin poisoning could kill a person within 36 to 72 hours of exposure, depending on the route of exposure, inhalation, ingestion, or injection, and the dose received. So, how much ricin is lethal? Well, ricin works by getting inside the cells of a person's body and preventing the cells from making the proteins they need. And without those proteins, cells die. Eventually, this is harmful to the whole body and death may occur. Effects of this type of poisoning depend on whether it was inhaled, ingested, or injected. It is difficult to say how much ricin could kill a person, as it depends on the castor beans, their size, weight, moisture content, time of harvest, and other factors. The minimum number of castor beans associated with the death was 2, but symptoms of castor bean poisoning have been documented with as few as 1/2 a bean and up to 30 beans. Now, how could you be exposed to ricin and how deadly is it? Well, it would take a deliberate act to make ricin and use it to poison people. Unintentional exposure to ricin is highly unlikely except through the ingestion of castor beans. If made into a partially purified material or refined into a terrorist or warfare agent, ricin could be used to expose people through air, food, or water. Now, in 1978, Georgy Markov, a Bulgarian writer and journalist who was living in London, died after he was attacked by a man with an umbrella. The umbrella had been rigged to inject a poison ricin pellet under his skin. In the 1940s, the U.S. military experimented using ricin as a possible warfare agent. In some reports, ricin has possibly been used as a warfare agent in the 1980s in Iraq and more recently by terrorist organizations. Ricin poisoning is not contagious. Ricin-associated illness cannot be spread from person to person through casual contact. However, if you came into contact with someone who has ricin on their body or clothes, you could become exposed to it. So, what is ricin used for? Well, ricin is the byproduct of castor oil production, and it's a protein. And unfortunately, it is used as a biological weapon and by assassins. It has also been used experimentally in medicine to kill cancer cells. Protein toxins such as ricin kill cells, and if it could be properly targeted, the goal would be to use it to selectively kill just the cancer cells while normal cells are spared. Is there a treatment, an antidote, or a cure for ricin poisoning? Well, because there is no antidote that exists for ricin, the most important factor is avoiding it. How do authorities confirm cases of suspected ricin poisoning? If authorities suspect that people have inhaled ricin, a potential clue would be that a large number of people who have been close to each other rapidly developed fever, cough, and excess fluid in their lungs. These symptoms would likely be followed by severe breathing problems and possibly death. If in suspected situations where the poison may have been decimated, preliminary environmental testing by public health or law enforcement authorities detects ricin in powders or materials released into the immediate environment. Persons occupying such areas may be observed for signs of poisoning. CDC can assess selected specimens on a provisional basis for urinary ricin and alkaloid in the castor bean plant. Only urinary ricin testing is available at the CDC or the LRN. So it's not something that's commonly tested for. Like they have to really know they're looking for it. And then it has to go to the CDC to be tested. So, okay, so this next website is the MDPI. So this is on www.mdpi.com. And the name of the article is Ricin, an ancient story for a timeless plant toxin. First, we're going to talk about the toxicity of the different routes, though. So this one talks about in portion 3.1 3.2, and 3.3. So, oral toxicity. Now, in humans, most of the intoxications occurred accidentally or voluntarily with the ingestion of castor seeds. Only a few cases of intentional absorption of castor bean extracts have been documented in suicide attempts. Whole ingested beans can pass intact through the gastrointestinal tract, whereas chewing facilitates the ricin release. Also, it has been reported that the seed can act as a time released capsule where it causes more damage. And then because it allows its release in the lower bowel, which, is more deadly. Now, after ingestion, vomiting, diarrhea, and abdominal pain are common symptoms. Massive gastrointestinal fluid and electrolyte loss are described, often complicated by hemat, he, hemat, hematemesis and melanea. I'm not a doctor. I don't know how to speak doctor. Finally, hypovolemic shock and multi-organ failure occur, which particularly involves the spleen, liver, and kidney. Despite a high number of intoxicated subjects with castor beans, and in this case, when they say intoxicated, it means they've received a toxic amount, toxic, right? It is quite difficult to calculate LD values for ricin in humans. In fact, the effective ingested ricin dose can only be supposed because of ricin content variations depending on the size, weight, and moisture of the seeds, as well as the cultivar, the region, the season, the plant growth stage. Moreover, in intoxicated subjects, it must be taken into account the degree of mastication, how much you chewed it up, stomach content, what else you already ate, your age, and comorbidities. And that's just a fancy word of other stuff you suffer from. Like, do you have heart disease already? Do you already have COPD? Did you already have gastrointestinal issues? Those are comorbidities. Things like diabetes, um, um, overweight. These are all considered. I think we all know what comorbidities are now because of the, nature of the age we live in. But for those that don't know, Okay, so all of those matter, Considering all these parameters, the fatal oral dose of ricin in humans has been estimated to range from 1 to 20 milligrams, approximately 5 to 10 beans. Now, we're going to move on to inhalation toxicity. No data is available for human ricin uptake by inhalation. In non-human primates, the lethal dose has been estimated to be 5 to 15 kilograms, depending on aerosol particle size. Inhalation of the particles that are able to penetrate deeply into the lungs are 1 to 5. It's got this funny little, it looks like a U, but the thing's on the wrong side and it hangs down. It's like an upside down H. I don't know what that, I don't know. Anyway, the particle size 1 to 5, and they display much more toxicity than the larger particles because those smaller particles are able to get more deep into the lungs. Inhalation of ricin causes slow onset of respiratory distress, difficulty breathing, coughing, fever, pulmonary lesions, and edema. Intoxicated animals develop these words: fibrinopurulent necrotizing pneumonia, accompanied by necrotizing lymphangitis, typically after a dose-dependent delay of 8 to 24 hours. Death occurs as a result of respiratory failure due to the massive alveolar fluid accumulation. So basically, it takes all those little hairs in your lungs and fills them up with fluid, so you're going to drown in your own lungs. It doesn't matter if they give you oxygen, because there's no place for the oxygen to go because those alveolars are already full of fluid. Okay, so let's talk about the injection toxicity. This has a super fancy word for injection, but parenteral. I guess that means injection because that's what they're talking about. Data regarding let's just say injection. I mean, geez, I struggle over this word
Parenteral.
Regarding injection ricin intoxication derived mainly from animal studies. Thank goodness. I mean, geez, I don't know what human would sign up for that trial, but anyway, by injection, mice had, okay, let's see. Mice had a lethal dose of 3 to 5 kilograms by intravenous and 22 kilograms by subcutaneous route. So it takes a lot more if you're going to just get the pellet up under the skin the way that umbrella murderer did. And if you were to just, catch a vein and put it in intravenously. And then let's see. Rabbits had a lethal dose of 0.5 kilograms by the intravenous route and 0.1 by the intramuscular route. Well, guinea pigs had a lethal dose of greater than 1.1 kilogram by the intravenous route and 0.8 kilograms by the intramuscular route. Human data only derives from the few cases of suicide or murder or their attempt, and the most known episode is the assassination of that Bulgarian dissident Georgy Markov, who in 1978 died 3 days after possibly being stabbed with an umbrella loaded with a ricin-containing pellet. Now, when someone is injected with ricin, immediate local pain at the injection site is reported, followed by general weakness within 5 hours. The following symptoms that are general and may be similar to sepsis: fever, headache, dizziness, anorexia, nausea, vomiting, hypotension, low blood pressure, and abdominal pain. Now, when they say anorexia, they don't mean an eating disorder. That just means that you're getting skinny and you can't eat. So this is medical anorexia, not mental. Okay, so this can be delayed by as much as 10 to 12 hours, even with high doses. Usually, local tissue damage at the site of the injection is observed. Laboratory abnormalities included elevated liver these words, transaminases, amylase, and creatine kinase, hyperbilirubinemia, myoglobinuria. That's got to be painful to listen to me try to sound these words out. Anyway, and renal impairment. I apologize for that. My medicalese is not good. Okay. The clinical course may progress to multi-system organ failure. Pre-terminal complications included gastrointestinal hemorrhage, hypovolemic shock, and renal insufficiency. Now, in chapter 4, it's talking about bioterrorism and environmental toxicity. I don't really want to go into too much about how easy it really actually is, but I was able to find several ways to do it, to process it. And that concerns me. If I could find it that easy because I'm curious, then that means Lori could find it extremely easy because she needed to. Now, as far as detecting ricin, especially after death, because that's what we would be curious about. I mean, there are ways to test for ricin in a live subject, and there are ways to test for ricin like on a surface. There are ways to test substances suspected to be ricin. But as far as testing for ricin after death, that's there are no specifically, let's see, according to the CDC, there are no specific clinically validated assays for detection of ricin that can be performed by the hospital healthcare facility clinical laboratory. No methods are available for the detection of ricin in biological fluids. Tests for ricinin, an alkaloid component of the castor bean plant, have been developed. Now we have a lot of dots. Let's connect them. Lori is a person that got what she wanted at whatever cost. When she went after Joe Ryan, she did not stop until she broke that man. Now, in the end, she wanted Chad Daybell, and she didn't let a single thing get in her way. But luckily, we have Joe's sister, Annie Cushing. Annie was able to get her hands on an audio tape of Lori talking about wanting to kill Joe. But first, let's back up a little and do this timeline here. So, in 1998, Stacy passes away after having had a long, mysterious gastrointestinal illness. Did Lori practice on Stacy? Did she perfect her, for lack of a better term, recipe on Stacy? Did she try out different methods? Stacy grew to fear food. She stated on more than one occasion that she thought she was being poisoned. Now we know Lori was a master manipulator. Did she gaslight Stacy into thinking it was her ex-husband that was the one that was poisoning her? Was Lori jealous of the attention Stacy was getting? Could Alex have been involved? After all, he did take her credit cards and her money after she died. Now, small amounts of castor, as we've learned, cause gastro issues. Could this be what made Stacy so sick? Now, think about it. She developed diabetes. Diabetes occurs when glucose builds up in the blood due to the pancreas not producing enough insulin or not using it correctly. Remember, Tylee was diagnosed with pancreatitis. Now, let's talk about Joe for a minute. Lori fought this man tooth and nail. According to his attorney, Joe thought Lori was a good mom in the beginning. He wasn't going for full custody at first. He just wanted his visitation. He just wanted to see his child and be part of her life. She meant everything to him. You got to remember, Joe Ryan grew up in foster care. He didn't have family. Tylee was his world. Now, Joe grew concerned when Tylee began to get sick. He had said that the fact that Lori fed Tylee nothing but processed foods concerned him greatly, especially when she clearly had digestive issues. Tylee's even in the children's hospital in Arizona, and she was diagnosed with pancreatitis. Pancreatitis. Interesting. So Tylee gets sick about the time Lori is losing in court, which is also suspect as all hell. So now she's too sick to see Joe, according to Lori. This was her fight. This was her argument. But that wasn't enough for the courts to block Joe. So when she didn't get what she wanted, Lori started to allege that Joe had messed with Tylee. Talk about diabolical. Well, Joe was absolutely cleared of this, however. They took his mattress, they took the whole top layer of it off, and they tested it up, down, and sideways. They tested a bunch of stuff, towels or something else too, I believe. I can't remember, but everything comes back negative. Nothing. Extensive testing, mental testing. Also, Joe showed that Joe was low to no risk of being a predator. Even the counselor that Lori took Tylee to grew to feel that Tylee was being coached. So Joe's cleared of all of that. And yet the courts decide to err on the side of caution, and they make Joe do what is called stepped visitation. Basically, it's like an hour a week for a few weeks, and then 2 hours for a few weeks, and so on and so forth. And these are all supervised visits through a court appointed supervisor. So it was at Joe's second visit that he's attacked by Alex with the stun gun. Now, the only way Alex could have known where this visit was scheduled, and it was scheduled just the day before at a different location than the previous day, is if Lori told him. In fact, he had drove from Arizona to Austin and spent the night at Lori's house the night before the attack. The stun gun incident put Joe in the hospital for 3 days. I mean, damn, that's not a minor little thing, right? It's pretty major. So let's just skip ahead to, so now Lori's basically, she's lost her case in Austin, Texas. She's not able to block him to the degree that she wants to. All of her shenanigans have not stopped Joe from seeing Tylee. So what does she do? She moves to Arizona. Now, this is what really financially destroys Joe. He was pretty comfortable money-wise up to that point, but The time that he needed to take off work to go see Tylee and the expense of the travel itself absolutely messed with his finances. Arizona is also where we see in the court papers that this is where Charles fights Joe at a bookstore during what's supposed to be like an exchange of custody at a neutral location. There's just extensive fighting that happens there in Arizona. And according to court filings by Joe, Lori blocks him at every turn. She either blows off the visits completely or she would set impossible parameters, such as like she would send him a letter the day before the visit. So the letter gets there after the visit, but that letter is saying, you need to confirm your visit time. So he shows up to the visit and she's not there. And Lori's saying things like, well, you never answered that letter. Like it's just, complete bullshit. She absolutely just blocks him and blocks him and blocks him. So eventually Joe moves to Arizona. So what does Lori do? She moves to Hawaii. By now, Joe is financially decimated. He actually winds up moving in with his attorney shortly after that in Austin, Texas. And the battle with Lori has taken such a toll on Joe's mental health that Joe's attorney says that Joe had had 3 DUIs in Arizona, and he arrives in Austin just depressed with a significant drinking problem. And because he's beside himself with the loss of his daughter. So he ultimately stays with the attorney several months and even stayed at the attorney's brother's house for a few months. The attorney says that through all of the struggles, Joe had maintained himself. He had not become an alcoholic. He had kept his chin up. But Lori moving to an island in the middle of the ocean and nothing Joe can do about it, it was crushing. And I can understand why. He became depressed and developed a drinking problem. Another interesting tidbit we learned from Joe's attorney was that Lori never paid her attorney. The attorney tried to quit, but the courts wouldn't let him. He actually wound up having to go to trial for free, basically, and Lori never did pay him. So anyway, so Lori and Charles, they wind up opening this business in Kauai, and it's a juice truck called Juice Island. Now, unsurprisingly, it fails. These food trucks are like a dime a dozen over here. In my opinion, it never had a chance of making it. It never had a chance of making the kind of money to support the style of living that Lori had become accustomed to and demanded. So that fails. That's a wipe. And so what does a diabolical damsel in self-created distress do when she's in this position? Well, Hawaii is expensive as hell. It really is. I think it might be the most expensive state to live in the United States next to New York. So, yeah, Charles and Lori wind up moving back to Arizona. Now Lori is unable to hire an attorney to block Joe because she never paid her old attorney. She's got a bankruptcy on her record from when she divorced Joe. And, she doesn't have this attorney to block him, and he ends up dead. Are we meant to believe that after all those years of never giving up on getting to have a relationship with Tylee, he simply ignores the fact that now Tylee is back on the mainland? I highly doubt that. In my opinion, Joe was either killed before he knew Lori had moved back with Tylee, or he had attempted to restart visitation and was killed as a result. My opinion. Don't sue me. I'm poor. It won't do you any good. Anyway, how might Lori have done this? Well, remember, Joe is now drinking heavily. Tylee had a key to her dad's house, to his apartment. Now, someone could have simply entered Joe's apartment late at night after he's likely to have passed out. And a castor poison in the form of a spray may have been sprayed on his unconscious face. Inhaled, it is deadly and faster acting. Remember, a few minutes back, we talked about it being 4 to 24 hours inhaled. Now, this person, we won't name Alex's name, may have locked the door from the inside and climbed out the window. Joe passed away mere months after Lori returned from Hawaii. I do not think that's a coincidence. A few months after that, she's giving her little talk to her buddies at the preparing a people, a bow, whatever it was. And this is the recording that Annie was able to find. This is the recording where Lori talks about Nephi basically giving her permission to kill Joe because he's come at her 3 times, you know. And she talks about, I went to my bishop and I told him, you better give me a temple recommender. I'm going to go kill someone. Okay, that's not how that works. That is never how that works. That's a complete bullshit story, too, in my opinion. Now, at this point, she's become obsessed with Chad Daybell. Only God knows why. I honestly think that she was starstruck by his status in this group, cult, whatever. Anyway, they're both married. So they both conveniently have visions of their prospective spouses dying in car accidents. But of course, they're full of shit, so nobody dies in any car accident. They plot with Alex to lure Charles to Lori's house, and they kill him. And then Lori throws a pool party that day and celebrates her newfound freedom. But now Lori's got these kids she's 100% responsible for. How is she supposed to lead the 144,000 into the promised land with these kids weighing her down? So she gets rid of JJ's dog, loads the kids up, and she moves to Rexburg, Idaho. Tylee is not happy about this. Anybody that's had an unhappy teenager knows just how difficult that can be. Now Tylee's a liability, and she keeps Tylee alive long enough to get all their stuff moved to Rexburg, and then shortly after, very shortly after, all the boxes are unpacked, Tylee is killed. Without Tylee, Lori cannot handle JJ, and he is killed. They bury the kids in Chad's backyard. Now Lori's looking at Chad like, what you waiting for? I already ordered the rings and my dress on Chad's Amazon account with Tylee's money, mind you. And Tammy dies after not feeling well for a day. Tammy, who was healthy and training for a marathon. She just quietly passes in her sleep after having a slight difficulty breathing. Now, I also wonder if she's having some diarrhea, but that's not something anybody ever really talks about. Oh man, I got bad diarrhea today. This is just not something that I don't want to say spread around. This isn't something that you share on a regular basis, but I'm interested to find out. Anyway, what if the gun Tammy saw wasn't a pellet gun at all, or a real gun? What if it was one of these super hyper realistic water guns that was supposed to spray castor poison in her face? Now that's pure speculation, but it's just a thought. More likely, she was sprayed while she slept, and maybe even 2 nights in a row, which is why she felt crappy the day before she died, but she didn't die that day. Maybe the first time Chad didn't spray enough on her. I guess the question is, again, did Tammy have diarrhea the day before she died? And then also, if she had had diarrhea after she died, this would not be something that anyone would find odd, because when you die, all of your bowels and everything let go. And I know this from my experience as a certified nurse's aide. When we would have a client that passed, we would get a diaper on him as soon as possible, because, things let go. So, but again, who talks about that? Not something folks volunteer, usually. So perhaps Chad attempted to have her ingest it. We know it dissolves in water, but it is very bitter, and so it would be hard to cover the flavor. Maybe she took like a drink or a bite of whatever it was and immediately rejected it, like, ugh, gross, there's something wrong with that. But rings on the way, Chad tries again, and this time spraying it in her open mouth as she sleeps. Finally, we have Alex, who mysteriously dies the day after Tammy is exhumed. He also complained of shortness of breath days before he died, or the day before he died, and he dies in a pool of his own excrement, his own diarrhea. The cause of death is listed as a pulmonary edema. Very, very interesting, especially since that is one of the side effects of castor. So, to recap, we have Stacy, who died of a mysterious gastrointestinal illness, and her pancreas was not functioning properly, the diabetes. Then we have Tiedye, who developed pancreatitis while in the care of Lori. Then we have Joe, who died of a mysterious heart attack, or what they think may have been a heart attack, but it was an unattended death, and so we don't really know what happened. We have Charles, who was shot to death by Alex when he's picking up JJ at Lori's home. Then we have the children who died in the month of September and were buried in Chad Daybell's backyard. We know that Alex is involved in that because his phone pinged in Chad Daybell's backyard the day after each of the children's suspected murders. Then we have Tammy Daybell, who died October the following month and was buried 2 days later, which is a feat into itself. 2 days later, an entire state away in Springfield, Utah. Anyone who's ever planning a funeral in 2 days is pretty monumental. Planning a funeral in another state in 2 days is, well, it's very efficient, creepily efficient. Alex dies 1 day after Tammy's body is exhumed, which is odd in itself because isn't that just some crazy timing after all these murders and all these things that he's done throughout the years? I mean, this is a man who did 2 years in prison for Lori because of the stun gun incident. Well, he would have done 2 years, but he got out for good behavior, as I understand it. So he would have done anything for Lori. So maybe he did take the toxin himself. Maybe he did take his own, end his time. But he had just gotten married 2 weeks before that. Just 2 weeks before that. To this nice lady, Zulema. Professional cuddler. That's I'm not even joking. That's her job. She cuddles people professionally, apparently. I guess she probably got some methods. But it's very odd. Now, here's another thing. Every single place where these deaths happened, Castor is invasive. Yes. So, it would have been extremely easy for Lori to get her hands on it and be absolutely sneaky about it, do it without a trace, and who's the wiser? And if this is something that she perfected back in 1998, maybe she went to the library to get the information she got, and so perhaps there's not even a record of it. Perhaps she already knows what she's doing and she never needed to look it up online. I think it's very coincidental that all of these things connect together like this. But again, these are all just my opinions. And I am not alleging, or I'm not saying that anyone that I've mentioned previous to here is guilty of anything. Again, these are all just my opinions. Don't sue me. I'm poor. It won't do you any good. Besides, I own student loans, so there's no chance of you even garnishing me. It's sad for you. All right. Okay. Well, thank you for watching. If I didn't bore you absolutely to death, please like. And if you'd like to see what other kind of stuff I put out, hit subscribe. All right. This is the Weird Mom signing out.
Voila. Voila. We did it. Okay. Okay. All right. That's a lot. Oh, it's pretty bright. Here, let's see. I didn't do a camera check before. If I don't have it. Oh, let's just move that out of the way. Sorry about that. Okay. Well, I guess I could turn this light off. Let's see. It's pretty bright on my face, huh? Ooh, that's... I don't know if that's better. It's spooky. It is October. But yes. Okay, well, first of all, I want to put up Tammy Daybell's foundation here. The link in the chat. And I have made... Okay, so we have her banner. And then I gotta go to this one. I'm gonna have this stuff down one day where I'm not like down like this trying to figure it all out. Okay. All right. There we go. Okay, so oops, that's not it. It's out of order. This is it. So Tammy Daybell, her family, her sisters and brothers and her family have put together this is the foundation. So, all right. It's so sad. All right, let me just pull it up again because I think I may have accidentally closed that window too. Hold on. Can't find it. I'll add it to the right little tab group. The little tab group thing in Google's pretty cool and really liking it. Okay. There it is. It's just tammydaybellfoundation.com. I'm going to try and come back in there without closing anything out like a weirdo. Okay, let's move this one over to the little tab group too. Okay. All right. And we're back. So here is that. Let me get back up to the comments here. Yes, she is like a sleazy Mormon con artist. Did I read his patriarchal blessing? Oh my God. That's not what they are. I've got one actually. So I don't know how well a lot of you know me, but I'm an ex-Mormon. I grew up in eastern Idaho in the area of all the Lori Vallow stuff. And so that's why I feel like so like, oh my gosh. And I have a kid that's Tylee's age, so they're like Tylee's birthday September, my kid's November. So it's, yeah. So I felt really connected to it because it's all just happening right around that same. It's like it's blowing my mind that this is happening in Rexburg, Idaho. I'll just put it that way. Like, oh, my great grandma lived there, my great uncles and aunts and stuff, and they had like a dairy there way back when in the olden days, and an orchard. And when I was a little kid, I would go and pick. We'd go pick apples. Oops, sorry, wait, that's for something else. Hold on. It's true sentiment. That's for a different thing. Okay, that was the wrong one. All right, let me open up my chat down here. That area is just really sweet and cozy, and it's like what you would see on a movie when you're talking about a small town, Rexburg. Actually, the funny thing is, when I moved here, I was rumored to have moved to Rexburg, and I never would have moved to. I'm not like they don't like tie-dye wearing lesbians in Rexburg, Idaho. They just don't. They don't care. They don't understand me. So, and I'm kicked out of the church basically over some stuff. We'll talk about it another time. That's not, but yeah. So I'm an apostate. Missionaries can't even mow my lawn. Like they'll come over and they'll be like, can we help you do something? Can we help you around here anywhere? Because they have to put in so many service hours while they're on their mission or whatever, right? And mind you, they pay for these missions. Like, I don't know if folks know that, but those boys save up and they pay for it themselves. All their food, travel, their bicycles, all their little outfits and stuff, their little badge, all their stuff. Anyway, so, but they have to put in so many service hours. And so they'll like come find jobs to do and then go switch into their service clothes, right? And so, and they never come back anymore because I'm in apostate. So it's okay. I'm okay with that. It's all right. Yes. Okay. So it's no great mystery to me why Mormons moved to Rexburg, Idaho, because it's a really perfect place for a Mormon. It's like a little tiny Salt Lake. It really is. It's like northern Salt Lake, like North Salt Lake B. I don't. So it's got a cute little temple there, the Rexburg Temple. And you get the Idaho Falls Temple. And, Mormons hang out there. Wait, is there a temple in Rexburg? No, I can't think. It's been a minute since I've been there. That's terrible. There wasn't before. Is there now? Were they going to build one? There's one in Idaho Falls, though. But anyways, there's a lot of Mormons in Rexburg. My point is, I'm not sure about the temple. Put a pin in that. I'm not positive on that. Don't quote me on that. But there's one in Idaho Falls. There's the Idaho Falls Temple. It's kind of a big deal, And that's, yeah. Just from that little area right there. Yeah. So, I got really into this, like, right when it started coming out. And then I'm living over here in Hawaii. Yeah. It's just nuts. So, let's see what else we got. Based on what? Okay, I was going to go back to my comments on here so I can put them up. Oh, look, I'm 4 behind. Listening, but you'll catch up later. All right, I get being on the phone. I do. All right, based on what Alex... This, yes. I think that any essay of the kids looks like Colby, for example, is perpetuated by Lori, not Joe. Yep. Yeah. I cannot imagine recovering from being raised by Lori. My mom was not a picnic. I was in foster care and stuff. I went through some shit. And it was still... I cannot imagine. Because, like, it's a recovery process. Like, when you're raised by a... You know what I mean? Like, it is. So, I can't imagine. It's rough. Yes. The witches of the chattest. Yes. Humana, with their little casting parties. Oh my gosh, the stuff we know now that we did not know then. So this is like, I did this back in 2020. I think it was like, I don't remember when it was. I don't know, it was a while back. It was one of the first ones I did. And I was just like, oh my God, I think, because I got them right there. I was just sitting here, laying here one day, and I was like, could it possibly? Oh my gosh, you know what it could be? And so I decided to make a video, and I actually have on my playlist, my Lori Vallow playlist has an episode where I got to talk to Joseph Scott Morgan about it. So, like, basically, even if it was, we couldn't really prove it now because of just the way that the bodies were handled. Like, they didn't treat them like it was a crime scene. They didn't treat Joe like he was a crime scene. And we didn't know what was going on with Charles then. Now we know so much. So much stuff, like all of the interviews and stuff, like the one by his ex-wife was very interesting, but and then by his widow as well. I mean, wow, there's so much, and we will go through it. But yeah, today I wanted to just revisit this theory, because the more stuff that I'm hearing, the more I'm feeling like it could be, even if it wasn't castor, that it was some type of, like, that they had some type of poison. Now we know that she talked about crushing up JJ's, what is it, Xanax, right? The Valium, Xanax, yeah. Yeah, and that stuff can knock you right on your butt, so. All right, so tomorrow what we're going to talk about is, everybody's talking about the tablets that Lori and Chad have in jail. And hopefully, if things work out, it just, we'll put it to we'll manifest greatness that this will work out. I may have a guest who's dealing with that right now. And what it's like when your kid, like, this is a mother who has an incarcerated adult child, like, it happens to the best of us. It's happened to me. I don't judge, we're all fighting our own battles. Like, we don't know, it's, but anyway, she might be able to come on and talk to us about that, about what that's about. And then I have a couple of friends that are in the system right now, and some family members. And so I made some screenshots and I uploaded my tiles. And so we're going to have a little discussion about that, about the tablets. And I'll give you a total rundown on all of that. Commissary, their how they're getting money on their books, how they're writing letters, if they're video chatting, are there video games, do they take books? We're going to cover all of that, all of it. So I'll see you guys tomorrow, and thank you so much for tuning in. Aloha. Okay, wait, now there's going to be that awkward where I got to go find my video now. Hold on, wait. Okay, here's what we're going to do. So today is the day that Tammy was stolen from her family and her friends that loved her dearly. And so that's why I have these. That's why I made this memorial for her here. Okay. Hold on, I gotta take that comment off of there right quick. I'm sorry to end abruptly, but you know what? Web Sleuth is on, and I totally watch Web Sleuth. So, you guys, I'm sorry. We have to go. Let's go to Web Sleuth. You know what I'm saying? I'll see you guys over there type stuff. But I'm going to play this little memorial for Tammy. And then we're going to play our little outro. I can't bring that. Where is that? It's lost. Oh, wait, it's in this one. Okay, hold on. All right, there it is. Yes, she was a wife and a mother, and she was a teacher. Like, she was not an educator, but she definitely taught a lot of people. But she worked in the educator profession, and she educated in a way, even though she was not directly. She worked at the schools. That's amazing. I mean, like, that in itself is an achievement. It's difficult to be around a bunch of rambunctious, raucous group of kids, so yeah, every day going in, finding out, getting to know each one of her friends and co-workers and a good many of the students. And she was beloved there in Rexburg, still thought about on a regular basis. Sweet, sweet, sweet lady. Loved ducks. Absolutely loved ducks. I have a bunch of ducks, and I named one of them Tam, and she is the only one that had little babies. So she has little ducklings out there. So she's one of the big white ones. So pretty. So, yes, Miss Tammy Michelle Douglas Daybell. So if you can, go and donate to her foundation in loving memory of her. Let's see if that's, yep, there we go. Put it in chat right here. There we go. Okay. Okay, aloha, you guys. I will see you tomorrow. I'm about to mute myself and get out of here. I'll see you over at Web Sleuths. I love you guys. Thanks for coming back.